Welcome to the number 2 team in this deep dive series. Now on to the Los Angeles Lakers. And this team, we all know they're going to have their growing pains. And as presently constructed, they will have some serious growing pains that could last longer than one season, depending on how the new Russell Westbrook experiment works. Honestly, the Lakers should come in lower in this tier, given their age, chemistry, and overall fit team-wise, probably behind the Nuggets. But you never doubt on LeBron. This is kind of like the Ben Simmons problem with Joel Embiid. Everybody says, how is this going to work? There's no spacing. With AD and LeBron, it worked because they were like a point guard and a big man, even though they're practically the same height. Russell Westbrook, though, overlaps too much with LeBron's skill set. The only reason they are coming in at 2 is because of the LeBron James effect. You don't make 8 consecutive finals and then win your 4th finals MVP on a 3rd different team for nothing. You've earned the respect. The only reason he isn't ranked as the best player in the league and is only 2nd best is because he's older than dirt. He's like Tom Brady old. So he's the 2nd best player in the league of 500 plus professionals instead of the 1st best. Sorry. And I really wish the Lake Show kept their 1st round pick from this year's draft in the Russell Westbrook trade. I had consistently mocked Jared Butler to them at pick 22, and the experience he would have gotten from LeBron would have been invaluable, as well as bringing in some much needed youth to this team. But this is the number 2 overall ranked team in these power rankings. Came in last year at 42 and 37th in the Western Conference, winning the first game of the play-in tournament, then going down to lose to the Suns, mostly due to injury. They did come in with the 13th ranking in the 2020 end-of-year power rankings. Of course, everything was predicated on health. But let's talk about these offseason moves that they made. They brought in Russell Westbrook with that trade. Austin Reeves, undrafted pick. Kendrick Nunn signed on a cheap mid-level exception deal. Malik Monk came for basically nothing. Rajon Rondo is back on the veteran minimum. DeAndre Jordan got bought out from the Nets and came in on the veteran minimum. Dwight Howard, Carmelo Anthony, Kent Bazemore, and Seiko Doombuya all came in on basically no money. They did lose Kyle Kuzma. Kind of sad to see the final draft piece that they had leave, but I think it's going to be good for him to go to a team that he can flourish on, not worrying what LeBron tells him his role is going to be night in and night out. Montrezl Harrell is gone, and he's really trying to find his place in the league. The former 6th man of the year has a specific skill set that just can't be used every night in today's NBA, and I think he's really struggling with that. The Alex Caruso is gone, and I'm kind of upset that they didn't re-sign him here. They had certain bird rights, if I remember, on him, and they just got a little cheap, said we didn't want to pay that much into the luxury tax. KCP is gone, and it's probably their biggest loss, to be honest, from everybody that they lost this offseason. I personally hated how he kept getting huge Laker contracts, but the dude hit clutch buckets in their championship run. Dennis Schroeder is gone. I would have liked him to re-sign here as well, but that whole contract thing happened. And lastly, Markieff Morris is gone as well, the lesser of the Morris brothers. And, good riddance. He didn't really offer much to the team. But let's move on to this point guard ranking where they're going to come in at 7th. Of course, LeBron is the quote-unquote point guard. So Russell Westbrook, Rajon Rondo, and Austin Reeves are all going to get kind of point guard duties, but not really. LeBron is your ultimate playmaker. As for Russell Westbrook, he is coming in as my 7th ranked point guard in the NBA. I'm a huge fan of him, and a lot of people are saying, oh, this isn't going to work. The spacing is awful. The shooting is awful. Who the hell is going to be the number 1 scoring option? I know everything is up in the air. Let's talk about the good and the bad with Russell Westbrook. The bad, he's looked really bad in the preseason, like 80 turnovers in 6 games. He's going to have a lot of turnovers and a really high usage rate that they're going to have to mix and match to figure out what to do come playoff time. And despite all the assists he has in his career, he's still not an accurate passer who was always reading the floor with superior court vision and hitting teammates in the shooter's pocket. He's just not very accurate with it, and he doesn't read the floor very well. He just gets a lot of assists on those fast breaks. He's a slashing point guard who hits his man a little too high, a little too low, and will mostly assist people on the pick and roll dump off pass just before the defending center has to decide whether they're going to stop Russ or the rolling center. Also, Russ Westbrook is not a good defender. He drifts a lot on defense, ball watching, trying to get those patented rebounds that he has to start the fast break, and he completely forgot how to shoot. Yikes, 31% from the 3-point line last year. A 50% true shooting average is horrible. And LeBron is going to have to compete for getting the ball. He has the 2nd highest usage rate in NBA history behind the one and only Michael Jordan. As for the good, it's a little bit like Giannis Antetokounmpo. If he stopped shooting the ball, he'd become an incredibly efficient player. Even the analytics would like him at this point. We're also incredibly underrating how much he transforms the Wizards with Bradley Beal last year. They were doing horrible halfway through the season, and then they just went on a tear. Russell Westbrook balled out, Bradley Beal balled out, and everybody came along for the ride. He's a competitive dude. There are few in the NBA that's going to go in, night out like Russell Westbrook does. He doesn't cheat you out of games. There's going to be no clips of Kyle Kuzma pushing him out to the 3-point line to contest his shot. And I just love Russell Westbrook when he's not on my team. But he doesn't give a fuck about the haters. Take the good with the bad when you talk about that. So either he or LeBron are going to need to take a step back this upcoming season. I'm going to expect Russ to be more of the Russell Westbrook in Houston, a little less than a 40% usage rate Russell Westbrook. And it's going to take some time for Russ to fit in. He took a while in Houston, he took a while in Washington, and now he's going to take some time in Los Angeles. The news articles are going to paint doom and gloom for the first 50 games or so, and somewhere after the All-Star break, the Lakers are going to take off. News media is going to go off on Russ all season though, so just get prepared. They're going to have headlines. Is it time to hit the panic button for the Lakers? Can you trade Russell Westbrook? Trade him while you can. Will Russell Westbrook tarnish LeBron James's legacy? Up next on Undisputed. And say what you will about Russ, the triple-doubles leader, the former league MVP, the first ballot Hall of Famer. This and maybe next year are going to be legacy-defining seasons. The answer to the question we have all had in the top of our heads, can Russell Westbrook ever win a championship? But let's move on to the point guard two with Rajon Rondo. And for Rondo to work on a team, for whatever reason, you just have to out-alpha him. Kevin Garnett did that in Boston, although it was a little different since he was such a young player when he came in. Dallas Dirk didn't do it, and it was a disaster. Sacramento, they're Sacramento, disaster. Chicago, disaster. The New Orleans Pelicans, it didn't work out, but he formed a really good connection with Anthony Davis on the court, which is important to the team he's on now. Then he followed AD to Los Angeles and paired with LeBron, and they finally figured out how to keep Rondo from blowing up a team with championship aspirations. He settled into his role as the perfect setup guy alongside LeBron. Then he went to Atlanta, disaster. Then he went to the Clippers, where all of NBA Twitter was like, this is the perfect fit. He's going to put him over the top. Too bad Paul George and Kawhi Leonard just ain't that dog to keep Rondo in his place. Disaster, got sent to the end of the bench, but now he's back in LA as a Laker, home again running as LeBron James's running mate. Now he is starting to age out of the league, 35 years old. His physical tool set is dangerously close to becoming unplayable despite how smart he is, and he is making a lot more turnovers these days than you expect from your main point guard. That being said, he's still a great backup too. He's got that scoop layup shot when he drives by players that is filthy. He's obviously a great passer, obviously incredibly accurate. He can throw half-court dimes with perfect accuracy. This brother should have been a quarterback. He has genius basketball IQ, only matched by LeBron James on the court. And he's able to set people up in the post where his guys want the ball, something that Dennis Schroeder wasn't able to do last season. And that was one of those little big things that true point guards can do that a casual, he's an okay point guard, cannot. I talk about this every now and then, but there's significant difference between the three major types of point guards. There's the shooting point guard like D'Angelo Russell, whose skill set is to get buckets and would be a wing player if they didn't have the height of a point guard. There's the slashing point guard who can get assists by driving and kicking, but they don't really have the skill set you want. So while the numbers look good, the efficiency isn't there. Look no further than Russell Westbrook. Then there's the true point guard, the facilitating primary ball handler that runs the offenses as the coach wants, hits guys perfectly in the shooter's pocket where they have a much higher accuracy, and he gets his man the ball where he can be the most successful, a la Rajon Rondo, a la Chris Paul. As for Rajon Rondo's defense, he's never going to be a top-tier defender, but you can't run whoever offense on Rondo, even though he's only 6'1", 180 pounds. His wingspan makes up for his lack of size defensively, and he's incredibly smart on the defensive end too. He'll swipe at the ball with perfect timing, contest shots with that 6'9" wingspan he has, and steal rebounds when you aren't hustling and paying attention 100%. Rondo did develop that Jason Kidd, well, if you're going to leave me open, three-point shot, and I know he shot 40.4% from the three-point line last year on 2 attempts per game, but he's still not a very good three-point shooter. What I saw a lot of for the LA Clippers is he was kind of jacking up shots like he was a sharp shooter, and you'd like to see him limit his shooting until the defenses sack off him too much and give him a wide-open shot. The best Rondo is playmaking Rondo who can shoot the three. And there is some history regarding him and Russ, but the two dudes are here for the same goal of winning, and especially with LeBron James around, I don't expect any locker room issues. Despite all the shit they get for being this type of player, that type of guy, people who blow up the locker rooms, they're very similar dudes in mindset. Moving on to their point guard 3, Austin Reeves, and I like him. He's a decent cerebral player. I just didn't believe he had the athletics to play in the NBA. I had him as an undrafted grade because of his ugly shot form and his awful physical tool set. He lacks the athletics and got by in college because he had 5 years more experience than everyone else. But he is a good free throw shooter, a clever player, has a nice mid-range game and is a good free throw shooter. He can run the pick and roll well and has about average ball handling. He will make some really poor shot selection decisions that was in Oklahoma, but he's been really impressive in the summer league and the preseason. I'll say this, he did not play that well at Oklahoma. He's a 30% three-point shooter at Oklahoma with 4.6 assists playing like 35 minutes a game. He had no business showing out like he did in the preseason, and I scoffed when the Lakers gave him a contract. But despite all the hype that Mac McClung got for being the new white kid on the block with that 44-inch vertical, Austin Reeves just put his head down and went to work being a very solid player for them in the offseason. He's going to be the perfect guy to learn under Rajon Rondo by all reports. They have a really good mentorship going on. He's got great size on him, 6'5". He's a really good catch and shoot shooter, 40% at Oklahoma. He's crafty with the ball, and he's not fast, but he gets by his players with creativity. And he just balled out with supreme confidence. Now, I don't think he's going to stick around in the league long term. He balled out in the preseason. He earned himself a guaranteed contract. I know, blah, blah, blah. I just don't think he's going to last with the athletics that he has right now. This is him at his physical peak. This is as good as Austin Reeves is ever going to be physically. Imagine him getting even 10% worse. Then again, this kid has already proved me wrong once. Moving on to the wing positions, where I'm going to have Malik Monk starting at the shooting guard. The main reason for that is because he's one of the few Laker wings that don't belong in a retirement home, but they're going to flip in and out any one of Kent Bazemore, Wayne Ellington, Malik Monk, and most likely not Taylon Horton Tucker because of his horrible shooting. But as for Malik Monk, I'm really glad the Lakers picked up somebody who doesn't have gray hair. On the other hand, a 23-year-old who's shown flashes of being very good and shot 40% from three last season does not sign to a minimum deal unless they're ring chasing. A 23-year-old ring chasing Malik Monk, that is not good karma. As for Malik, he was a solid shooter last season, and so far in this preseason, I'm not sold yet. He learned how to shoot the three like yesterday. I want another season of consistency to build on before we call him a sharpshooter. For his career, he shot 34%, 33%, 28%, and then last year hit 40. Does that make last year the new norm for him or an outlier season? But he does have a quick trigger and he's unafraid to shoot from deep range. He just had such an up and down career in Charlotte. Then again, Charlotte stinks, so what do you expect? He's got a lot of immaturity though as well in his young career. Not all 40% shooters are created equal though. Last year, Malik Monk had a shot quality in the 17th percentile and an openness rating in the 11th percentile, while another 40% shooter, Alex Caruso, had the 97th percentile shot quality and the 83rd percentile openness rating. Basically, Malik Monk took and made more difficult shots at an equal, if not slightly better rate. And he's not much of a playmaker, but I expect the ball dominance in LA won't ask Malik Monk to do too much more than shoot. That's really good because he struggles when he puts the ball on the floor. He doesn't have great vision. He doesn't have great handle. He's very turnover prone whenever he touches the ball and just doesn't shoot it immediately. And he also lacks muscle trying to finish at the rim if he does drive. Defense is going to be a major issue for him, one that might lose him starting minutes. He's an undersized guard at 6'3". He struggles with size and can be bullied by bigger guys. He struggles with speed and can be blown by faster guys. He's an awful off-ball defender, losing focus, losing his man, making a horrible closeout. And he could earn himself a deal though this year if he does play well, if he locks in on the defensive end, and if he still hits that 40% from the three-point line. Moving on to LeBron James, the GOAT. There's not a lot to say about LeBron. He's the top 2 best non-big NBA player in history. I have him behind Michael Jordan. Put him wherever you want, maybe in the top 3 with, I don't know, Magic Johnson. He's second in career PER at 27.39. 6th in his career in win shares per 48 with .232. 3rd in the NBA with career win shares, 242.04. 2nd in box plus minus, 9.89, and 1st in value over replacement player, 137.3. He's going into his 19th season and is reaching unprecedented levels of greatness playing this good for this long. That said, he is old as fuck. He doesn't play defense much anymore, and it does negatively impact the team, which is one of the major reasons why I have him as the 2nd best player in the league. He plays that kind of free safety role these days where he hunts passing lanes, but mostly just walks around and doesn't really guard his man, forcing his teammates to switch around as needed. He is the ultimate point guard though, and should be labeled the point god instead of somebody else. He's an incredible passer, best in the NBA, basketball savant. Hell, he's a real life savant. He's the best driver in the game. When he puts his head down, nobody's going to stop him. He always makes the right basketball play, and it's incredible that he never became a really good shooter in his career, yet is in the running to be the NBA's leading scorer. That's just how good LeBron is. And I became a LeBron fan when he learned how to be a closer. I still don't trust him like I do a Michael Jordan or a Tom Brady, but the dude routinely hits buckets when you need him to in the 4th quarter. I don't know what else to say about LeBron. I'm not on Undisputed, so I won't talk about him for 2 hours for 365 days a year, but the dude is one of the greatest. But let's talk about his best running mate, Anthony Davis. And I've already complained about his ilk, the Lauri Markkanens, the Kristaps Porzingises, who are all over 7 feet but refuse to play the 5. But I get it. AD is more injury prone than that guy from SpongeBob whose bones are made of glass. All I ask is, can he play the 5 in the playoffs or in closing stretches for games that you need? I have no problem with him not playing the 5 because he's so brittle, but just when you need to take the game over, when it's an important moment, please slide over to that 5 position. He looks bigger and stronger this year, and maybe he won't get hurt this time, because I don't think I can read another article telling me about how good he is when he comes back from injury. Maybe Anthony Davis will be healthy this season. And I'm so torn when I watch AD. Sometimes I feel like he's the best player in the league. Sometimes it feels like he's an overrated top 25 player at best. He had his absolute worst career season last year. His shooting completely fell off to 26% from the three and never shot above 34% his whole career, so that's always been a bit of an issue. His free throws have always been somewhere between good and not good enough. Last year he had 74% a career low, but he's a career 80% free throw shooter. And pairing up with teammates like LeBron, who's been sub 70% the last 3 years at free throws, and Russell Westbrook sub 70% 2 of the last 3 years, this is going to be a recurring issue for their quote-unquote big three. Who knows what he's going to miss 2 months with this year, though? A sprained ankle, a broken pinky, a bee sting. But he's always going to be a great defender and rim protector when he's healthy. He can ball handle well for a guy his size. He has a really good mid-range game. He's a great defender. Supposedly he can guard 1 through 5, but I've seen his speed diminish over the past few seasons. Perhaps he's just been hurt when I watch Laker games, but that still is the AD dilemma. I don't see that same level of burst, explosion, and agility that a lot of people report. He could still get up there though, despite having 74 injuries throughout his career, as evidenced by some of the mean alley-oops this preseason. And he's such a hot and cold player mentality-wise. Some games he's going to drop 35 in your face. The other games he's going to have a quiet 14. But he falls every other shot, and I think this is part of the reason why he gets hurt so often. But he's elite when he's healthy. He's somewhere in the top 10 when he's healthy. When he's healthy. When he's healthy. When he's healthy. So the only question for Anthony Davis coming into this season is, can he remember how to shoot? He's got to be a respectable shooter with Russell Westbrook and LeBron James on the floor at the same time as him now. But let's talk about this center position. And I do recognize that there's Anthony Davis starting at center rumors. I'll believe it when I see it. We've been calling for that for years, and I still have yet to see it consistently. I've seen Ben Simmons make three-pointers in the offseason. I've seen Russell Westbrook and Rajon Rondo be great teammates in the offseason. And I've heard Anthony Davis is going to play the center in the offseason. As for who I expect to be their starting center for the majority of the games, I have DeAndre Jordan starting at the 5. I'm not sure why DeAndre was pushed out the back door in Brooklyn. He still is a rim protector to some extent, and in his role of rim running, rim protecting. That's all you need from DeAndre Jordan at this point in his career. Obviously, he's going to get punished switching on defense or being anywhere near the perimeter on either side of the court. He's not meant to be an offensive threat. He rim runs, he rim protects. That's why he looks so bad out in Brooklyn. He still has hops. Brooklyn fans made it sound like doom and gloom. DeAndre Jordan needs to retire. He's still a decent player. It's just today's game has passed him by. He struggled defensively in stretches for the Nets, and I didn't mind having Nick Claxton start over him. He's younger, hungrier, has more bounce, but he can still rebound. He can be a solid interior presence. He just had a really low block percentage last year at 2.5%. I'm attributing that a lot to the fact that people know who DeAndre Jordan is. He's basically going to be a matchup starter if Frankie V plays it smart. Basically, it gives you the same thing Dwight Howard does, minus the chaos. Speaking of Dwight Howard, he's settling into the third stretch of his career. The first stretch, he was the best defender in the league, high-flying, highlight reel, Hall of Fame talent. The second stretch, he was cancer on any team he went to. And this is the third stretch, just chaos. His play is chaos. His hair is chaos. When he's on the court, you'll know he's there. He'll play like 12 minutes, score 8 points, 5 rebounds, 3 blocks, and 5 fouls before getting ejected for a flagrant foul. But he played really well in LA for the championship run, and he can still get up there and block a shot. He's great energy for the team. He'll disrupt the game for better and for worse. But he can defend the true fives in this league like Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid. He's not going to play a lot of minutes because he's either going to foul out or get ejected, or he just doesn't meet the matchup. So don't worry about minutes for him at age 35. And honestly, I don't care what anybody says. I'd rather have Dwight Howard as my backup center than Andre Drummond. But let's talk about this bench where they did come in at first. Now I'm attributing that mostly to the fact that LeBron James and Anthony Davis were out. So a lot of the bench players got starter minutes, making it look like their stats were better. Starting first with Carmelo Anthony, another old-ass guy on this roster, but I'm really happy to see not his career revival, but career continuation. Obviously, the NBA game passed him by. Those mid-range jumpers are so inefficient and unnecessary in today's modern offenses. But he, even now, is still a bona fide bucket getter and turned himself into a 40% three-point shooter. He's going to be an issue on defense. This whole team is going to be an issue on defense, but it'll be a defensive liability and struggle in stretches because he's just old and slow at this point. And while he had a career low in scoring last season, he had a career high in three-point percentage. He's becoming a much more efficient player finally at this point in his career. Even the analytics assholes will like him now because he's a legit 3-point shooter. His role is going to be for the Lakers, score in bunches, then go sit on the bench so you don't become a liability. Moving on to Taylon Horton Tucker, he's going to be out for thumb surgery for about a month. He is progressing nicely though. LeBron loves him, and he's going to be 21 this season. Super young. And at this point in his career, he's a really good slasher. He gets to the rim well. 53% of his shots came at the rim, ranking him in the 99th percentile. He finished in the 96th percentile in finishing talent. He's improving his playmaking and passing skills, had a 23 and 10 assist game that showed the improvements that he's made in the past few seasons, and he's a good defender. Look for him to be their defensive small guard stopper this season. He does get out of control though and will turn the ball over a little more than you like. He had turnover issues, 2.8 to 1.6 assist to turnover ratio last season, and while this was an upgrade from his 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio from the rookie season, it still needs improvement. And last year I got into it with Laker Nation asking for Taylon Horton Tucker to run the point instead of Alex Caruso when Schroeder and LeBron were out. I know he was super young and super inexperienced and super mistake prone, but I like his potential upside in slashing that creates shots for his teammates. He is really undersized at like 6'3", 6'4", but has a freakish 7'1" wingspan. And that in no small part leads to him being a really bad 3-point shooter. He got even worse last season with more looks. His 3-point percentage fell from 31% to 28%, and he's really bad from mid, shot less than 20% from 15 to 19 feet out. I don't see him as a breakout, most improved player that most articles are predicting. He just won't have the usage rate, let alone everything else talent-wise. Basically for him, his poor shooting is why he's not starting. If he does learn how to shoot the 3 at some point, stretches the floor, then he's definitely a capable starter for this team. Moving on to a guy who can shoot, Kendrick Nunn, another guy who could have gotten more money this offseason, but he's also a young guy ring chasing. Now, he is a tough kid. He fought his way off the undrafted heap in 2018, but he's another one of those undersized guys, a shooting guard with the size of a point guard. He's a good shooter, has a really nice mid-range game and floater. He's a great 3-point shooter, 38% in just his second season in the NBA. His 3-point shooting puts him in the 65th percentile among guards. He's in the 67th percentile in mid-range shooting. He shot in the 69th nice at the rim, ranking him in the 89th percentile for combo guards finishing. He's in the 88th percentile of pick and roll finisher, the 92nd percentile in catch and shoot opportunities, and ignoring centers, Kendrick Nunn had the 10th best effective field goal percentage last season, putting him around guys like LeBron and Giannis. He's a good 3-point shooter, sure, but a great free throw shooter at 93%, and on this roster, that is invaluable. He's just a versatile dude offensively. And I saw a lot of rumors that he's a guy who cannot create his own shot. I'm calling bullshit. He shoots just fine off the dribble. What he can't do is create and playmake for his teammates. Only averaged 2.6 assists last season on 30 minutes a game. Thankfully, he's not going to be asked to do that much on a LeBron, Russell Westbrook, Rajon Rondo team. That said, he is prone to disappearing throughout games, and he's a little older than you think after going undrafted in 2018. He's already 26 years old, but he's probably the only roster on the player that's actually quick still and under 30 years old. That said, he has the same limitations as Malik Monk. He's a really bad defender, 111.6 defensive rating last season, which was worse for the Miami Heat. Most metrics across the board have him as a poor defender, and of course he is undersized. So what is he going to do to balance that out? We'll have to see. Moving on to Wayne Ellington, another guy who can shoot and not defend. He's a really nice catch and shoot player. His job is to shoot the 3 and to shoot the 3. If he hits, he'll play. If he misses, he's out. It's as simple as that. He was the worst defender on the Pistons last year, who were also terrible on their own, had a 117 defensive rating. He'll offer you literally nothing defensively. His best defensive year was like a decade ago, and it still was an awful 109 defensive rating. Somebody is capable of playing perimeter defense, though, is Kent Bazemore, and I think they're going to flip a lot of his minutes. I see Wayne Ellington as the starter in many lineups. I think Kent Bazemore is going to take that role because he's more defense than 3-point shooting. He's likely to play a lot of games guarding the other team's best wing player and still shooting a respectable percentage, something that Taylon Horton Tucker can't do. He does have small brain plays that just drive you nuts because the dude has the talent. So pending whatever Taylon Horton Tucker does when he comes back, I think Kent Bazemore is going to be their best defender. He's just such a streaky shooter. He did have a significant bump in 3-point percentage last year at 41%, while his career average is 35%, so a little bit again like Malik Monk. It's yet to be seen if that's going to hold steady, if that's going to stay over 40%, or if he's going to revert back to the mean. As for Trevor Ariza, he's on the roster as well. He's out 2 months for an ankle surgery, and he is also old as dirt, 36 years old. I honestly forgot he was still in the league. So who knows how good he's going to be this year coming off surgery. He's an inconsistent 3-point shooter. Some seasons he's going to be good. Some seasons he's not. He's a decent perimeter defender and doesn't make many mistakes, which is why he's stuck around for so long. And lastly is Seiko Doombuya. They signed Seiko, the guy that nobody wants. It's a little funny, I'll admit, to watch the Lakers pick up all the Nets scraps. DeAndre Jordan, Seiko Doombuya, and who knows, because the Pistons gave up on him. The Nets immediately said no after like one preseason game. The Rockets said no thank you, but the dude is only 20 years old. So who knows what he's going to offer you. I think he might moonlight a bit as a backup power forward until Trevor Ariza comes back, but I don't really expect Seiko to offer you much. And they do have one roster spot and one two-way spot available. Now, I didn't mind Joel Ayayi and the other guys getting waived, but I think they made a mistake letting go of Chandi Brown. Chandi was like the perfect 3-and-D player for them on a super cheap contract just coming out of the draft. He shot a really good three-point percentage in college. And honestly, watching the tape, I was more impressed with him at Michigan than I was with the number 8 overall pick Franz Wagner. There's a Reggie Bullock career in there somewhere. But let's move on to the coach and culture ranking, where they're going to come in at 10th. And I'm not fully sold on the current front office yet. I'm completely sold on the history of the LA Lakers. I'm sold on their marketability and attraction to free agents, as well as finding incredible talents in the draft. But they've made a lot of questionable moves in the last season. They've also got late GM running the show, and we all know he has no problem being a win now, roster decimating player. Just ask the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Miami Heat. Just this offseason alone, I'm so unsure why they flipped so many players when trades while they were still title favorites last season, barring health and injury. Is that a Rob Pelinka problem or a lit GM problem? And then they went out and got Russell Westbrook instead of a guy that would fit more like a Buddy Hield. Now, sure, Russell Westbrook is probably 5 times the player Buddy Hield will ever be, but Buddy Hield just makes sense. Buddy Hield just works, and they didn't have to give up as much to match the salaries. But the head coach, Frank Vogel, Frankie V, he's a good enough coach. LeBron James is really the coach of the team, but Frank Vogel made it work alongside with them in 2020. They're going to be doing a lot of roster experimentation on this team, playing Anthony Davis at the 5, trying to figure out who's going to be their 2 guard, Malik Monk and Bazemore, Wayne Ellington. And with the unexpected rise of Austin Reeves, who could be a possible backup point guard, maybe they'll have a Rajon Rondo, Russell Westbrook starting backcourt. As for Rob Pelinka, he's made questionable decisions. He's a questionable guy, but you can't deny that he's made some good decisions as well. And the owner, Jeannie Buss, by all accounts, seems like a nice person. I know they don't have Steve Ballmer money, but I expect them to do good things. Moving on to the season projections, where they're projected to win 52.5 games, and they have the tied first best odds of winning the championship at 3-1. Now, we all know with LeBron James teams, it's finals or bust. So we'll see what he's going to be able to do with this team of geriatrics. The get off my lawn Lakers. They're nearly the oldest team in history. They have the average age of 29.6 years per player, obviously heavily weighted by guys like THT, Malik Monk, and Austin Reeves. They have 10 players on the roster that are 32 or older. Now, 538 predicts that the Lakers are going to come in the 9th seed this season. And while I understand they're going to be a really old team, defensive-minded, run through the big man Anthony Davis, play inside out, have slashing ball handlers who can't really shoot that well in LeBron James or Russell Westbrook, and they're going to play at a slow pace because 3/4 of their roster have gray hair in their pubes, you can never count out LeBron James, and that's why this team is coming in as the second best team in the 2021 power rankings. But that's going to do it for the Los Angeles Lakers. Let me know what you think, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I'll catch you in the next one where we unveil the best team in the NBA.